So 4 years ago, we wrestled with the decision of whether to buy an RV or not. I'm a nerd, so I did a ton of math and a bunch of spreadsheets to figure out if it was going to be cost-effective and worthwhile. We ultimately decided to take the plunge and buy an RV, and we hit the road. We've traveled for 4 years, and we've been traveling around the state of Tennessee, and our goal has been to hit all the Tennessee state parks, and we're almost done with that. I wanted to see the state that I'd grown up in and lived in my whole life. We also used it to go further and further away from our house and to learn how to RV and basically practice and become good RVers. So we're starting off 2024 with a non-RV trip. We're in the city of Fort Worth. I had to do some work for my company, and we wound up in Fort Worth, and we just made it a long New Year's holiday, kind of a little mini vacation. I brought Emily, and I made her do work over the New Year's holiday. Load number one, unpaid employee Emily. You're doing great, Emily. You're doing great. Now I'm gonna take it over to the next office.
Who saved the day and asked the lady at the front desk for a cart?
What?
I did. She had a cart.
Hey, how don't you hush your mouth and just go over to the next office and unload all this?
Let's go. I'm gonna ask that person if they have a cart.
We have a whole nother load for you to come and do.
Let's go.
Since this was a non-RV trip, it was the perfect time to compare non-RV to a traditional travel trip. So this trip we traveled via air, we had a hotel, we had a rental car, all the normal stuff. And it was a great time to decide if it was worth it. Wait, worth it. See what I did there? Fort Worth. Fort Worth. So has buying an RV been worth it? Would it have been better if we just traveled traditionally? And if it was more expensive to buy the RV, has it been worth the extra expense for the experience that we've had? And I'll caution you, this is going to be a very nerdy video. I love spreadsheets. I work in spreadsheets the way Picasso worked with oils. It's my preferred medium. So I don't really count food in my calculations because when we are traveling, we eat out anyway. There's really no additional cost, whether you're traveling in an airplane or traveling in an RV. Food is part of the experience when we travel. We look for good places to eat and try to enjoy a good meal in the local area. The Goat Rodeo was really good today. Great burgers, hole in the wall. Excellent. Once you get to a location, you got to find a place to stay. Most people stay in hotels. We're staying in a hotel while we're in Fort Worth. The average cost of a hotel room in America is like $150 a night. We're just staying at a 3-star hotel, which is kind of nice. And it was over a holiday weekend, so it was a little more expensive. And it was $184 a night. There's pros and cons with hotels, obviously. The pro with a hotel is there's a hotel everywhere. There's different budgets. If you want to go cheap, you can stay at a cheap hotel. If you want to have a little nicer experience, you can stay at a nicer hotel. The big con with a hotel, bad thing, is filth. I think the biggest problem with hotels is you're staying in a room that a bunch of other people have stayed in and done God knows what in. And that's kind of gross. You definitely don't have that going on in our RV. We're the only two people that have ever stayed in our RV. And it's our filth and our germs, which is a good thing for us. Once you get to your location, you've got to get some transportation. One of the simplest ways, get a rental car. There's other options that are available now, but rental car is pretty easy. The average cost of a rental car is about $110 a day for a standard size car. This trip we're on, it cost $107 a day, so that checks out pretty close. Having wheels on your trip makes the trip very easy. And with a rental car, being able to select the type of car you want makes it easy. You need a big car, you need a little car. And one of the cons with rental cars, they're very expensive. Sometimes dealing with rental car companies, they might be one of the most brain-dead companies on the planet Earth. Cue the Seinfeld episode, Reservation.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have no midsize available at the moment.
I don't understand. I made a reservation. Do you have my reservation?
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, we ran out of cars.
But the reservation keeps the car here. That's why you have the reservations.
I know why we have reservations.
I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. See, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation, the holding. Anybody can just take them.
We've experienced plenty of disasters picking up rental cars. They seem to not be there more than they are there, even if you've reserved them. And then sometimes you just get a crappy car. You might have a blowout, your car may break down, and if that happens on your trip, it basically just messes your entire trip up. And then if you don't have an RV, you gotta travel via air. At the old airport. Fun. So the average ticket price in America is $362, so that's a little over $750 for a round trip flight. That's expensive. This trip we just booked, it was $550 round trip, so that's a little lower than the national average. The pro with flying is it's fast. It really is a miracle. You're packed into a metal tube with hundreds of other people and you magically arrive in another part of the nation. The con with flying is it's expensive. $760 for a round trip for one person's a lot. If you're traveling with a large family or a group of people, you're spending thousands of dollars just to get to your destination. And then you have to deal with not the miracle side of travel, getting to the airport, to and from the airport. You have to arrive hours early. You have to be groped by official security personnel, and they touch your junk. Constant delays, cancellations of flights, missing your connecting flights, rushing to get to your connecting flights, mobs of people, and for people like me, motion sickness. And then there might not be an airport close to where you want to go. I'm an RVer, and most of the places I want to go are out in the boondocks, and there's not an airport in and out of those places. Air travel, not my thing. Not a fan. This is a great example of air travel. We've been waiting for 40 minutes for our bags after we got off the airplane, after our airplane landed. Ready to go home, tired of traveling. So contender number 2 is RV travel. So you've got two main costs there. You have to have a campground to stay in, so you have to pay for that. And then you have to have your rig. So let's talk about those two things. So a campground's generally cheaper than a hotel. Generally, we stay at state parks. We're at a state park right now. Sometimes when we go on longer trips and we want full hookups, then we'll stay at a nicer facility, and those costs, they're about double what you'll pay at like a state park. So over the 4 years that we've traveled, the average cost of the campgrounds that we stayed at was $39.17 a night. So that's pretty cheap, way cheaper than a hotel. Your other major expense will be your rig. Our rig is a fairly conservative rig. For us, it's a great option. So we have a truck and we pull a travel trailer. And that's a pretty inexpensive option. There's other options. You can do big, diesel pushers. You can do Class A's. You can spend a lot of money on a trailer too. So with our truck and trailer, it's a fairly economical, because all we had to do, I already would have had a truck probably to drive, and then we're just adding a trailer in order to have a rig. And then we didn't buy a hugely expensive trailer. We bought a smaller trailer, which keeps your cost down. And because we pull a smaller trailer, we don't have to have as big a truck, so I can pull it with a regular half-ton truck, and that works great. So all that keeps your costs down. And since we bought a smaller trailer, we got a little nicer trailer. So a lot of the amenities on our trailer are probably a little nicer than a typical trailer. We wanted it to be a little nicer and smaller because the places we like to go, like state parks, generally require a smaller trailer. So with the truck, you've got fuel, and then you've got depreciation and wear and tear and all that kind of stuff that goes into that. So if you use the official government mileage rate and figured out how much does it cost per mile to operate your vehicle as the government would reimburse you, it winds up being pretty close to what the actual depreciation and fuel costs were for what we drove. The mileage rate that they do, it calculates your fuel, so your mileage that you would pay for your fuel, and then it accounts for depreciation, wear and tear, and everything that goes into owning a vehicle. And we drove our truck 9,996 miles, so right at 10,000 miles just on our RV trips. Just using the government mileage reimbursement, it would have cost us $6,547 to kind of reimburse us for the cost of driving the vehicle. When I did the actual math of what it cost to own my truck, like what I paid for it, what its trade-in is now, and all the money that I've spent on it, including buying gas for the miles that we drove, I came up with a pretty similar cost. It was $5,731. Now the mileage, when I'm towing the trailer, I get about half the mileage that I get when I'm not towing the trailer, and I took that into account when I did that calculation. I think I've put about 70,000 miles on the truck in general, and 10,000 of that was travel, but they came up pretty close. 57 versus 6,500 is a pretty close number. So both those methods came up with a pretty similar value. Owning the rig, the truck, cost me about between $5,000 and $6,000. So you do the price of the trailer and the price of the truck to get your total cost. But you can imagine owning an RV with a motor in it is going to add to those costs, because that's just a motor that's sitting there not being used regularly as your daily driver. So I get the benefit of a normal daily driver where I don't have to, those 10,000 miles were just part of the 70,000 that I drove it. With a other rig, you're literally just whatever those miles on that, whatever it depreciates, you're full bore into the the 10,000 mile trip that you went on. So the trailer itself was the biggest cost of, RV travel. And if you're driving a rig with a motor in it, it's going to be way more than this. So over the 4 years, the depreciation alone on the trailer, which is all you really have to worry about, what did I pay for it? And then what is it worth now? And then divide that over the miles driven and the time that you owned it, and that's what it cost you. So over the 4 years, I've lost right at $14,000. So it was $13,794 is what the depreciation on the trailer is. Now, like I said, our trailer is a middle tier. It's a smaller trailer with nicer stuff on it. We bought it for around $25,000. And after 10,000 miles on the trailer, it looks like I could trade it in for about 12. So it's lost about half its value over 4 years. You lose value a lot early. It all happens early. So the depreciation will slow down now that it's 4 years old, and it won't depreciate as fast, but now the maintenance costs are going to go up. So there's lots of things that are broken on it. There's things on it that are broken right now that I need to get fixed. I'm going to have to put tires on it at some point. I'll have to get the hubs repacked. Things will just start breaking that will require maintenance. And then if we did any upgrades, that's included in that $25,000 cost. But that works out to about $294 a month over the 4 years that we drove it, or $1.38 a mile. $25,000 travel trailer depreciating over 4 years is $294 a month. If you're driving a big rig and it costs $50,000, straight, do the math. It's going to be double what I'm paying. If you drive a rig that costs $100,000, it's going to cost 4 times what I'm telling you it's costing. So the more you spend on your rig, that's going to make your cost go up. So I feel like I'm pretty cheap in the way we've done it. I already had a vehicle. I'm just using an existing vehicle that would be depreciating anyway. So I'm not depreciating 2 motors, I'm only depreciating 1 motor. And then I'm adding a $25,000 travel trailer, which is expensive, but not as expensive as other options that are out there. I mean, there's travel trailers that cost way more than the one we're driving, way more. So if you look at the cost of RV travel, everything all involved, for our 28 trips that we took, for our 10,000 miles that we took over 4 years, driving our truck, taking our RV, and getting a campsite when we got there cost us right at $24,000. So $23,664. If we had just driven our own vehicle, like my truck, and not bought the RV, and stayed at a hotel when we got to wherever we were going, and done it that way, car travel, it would have cost much less. It would have been $19,402. So it cost over $4,000 more to travel the way we traveled. So it's 22% more to travel in an RV. And that's using it a lot. We used our RV a lot. I mean, we went on 28 different trips over 4 years. I mean, that's not using it every day, but for people who are working still, that's using it a pretty good amount. So I got to divide the cost of the RV over a lot of trips. If you're not using it a lot, that math gets way worse, way quicker. So even using it 28 times over 4 years, we still came out worse by traveling via an RV, by owning an RV and traveling that way, versus just getting in our car and staying at a hotel wherever we wanted to stay. Now that doesn't even get into the fact that there could be other things that add to your cost that we didn't really have to experience yet. But we will. Hopefully we would never have a wreck, but if you wreck your RV, you got to deal with that. You'll have a deductible in your insurance at a minimum, and you may have a complete wipeout if you don't have the right coverage, or you may just have to get it fixed, and you may have to come out of pocket on some of that. If you don't really wreck it and you just damage it, like I've banged some things up, some things are broken on it at the moment, and that's going to cost money to get fixed, and I usually just don't get it fixed, but I should. And then we talked about, as it gets older, you're going to have more maintenance on it. As you own the RV, you're going to want to do upgrades to it. Like we didn't like the mattress that came with it, so we bought a new mattress. Every time you do an upgrade, that's going to add to your cost. And then ultimately, you have to store the RV when you're not using it. Now, you may have property where you can just park the RV and it doesn't cost you anything, but if you live in a town, like we paid to store at a lot for, a year while we lived in town, you may have to pay to store your RV when you're not using it, which adds to your cost. Now, I did not include that storage in any of these calculations because that was just something we had to do that a lot of people don't have to do, but that just adds straight to the bottom line.
So I'm going to do all this in 3 parts. One, I'm going to look at RV travel versus other forms of travel and see which one costs more. And then I'm going to do, has an RV been worth it for us? In our 4 years, 10,000 miles and 28 trips, is it been worth it to us to be an RV traveler versus a traditional traveler? And then finally, just because there's so many numbers involved. I'm just going to nerd out. I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet that I built, and I'll share it with anybody who wants it.